I have a young family, 4 children, a wife and 4 children, and didn't really have any money to invest, so Dave gave me the break of my lifetime. He started up a new company called Stevens and Rankin in 1978, in which I owned 50% and he owned 50%. We subsequently had brought in other partners, but long and the short, I bought everybody out about 13 years ago. So now I'm the sole owner, other than I have my children, my family are all shareholders in the company.
I started working here as a student probably around 1988, and then when I graduated from university, I started working full-time here in 1992. So I started out doing accounts payable, and then I sort of worked through different areas of the accounting functions, and now I'm the controller and vice president of finance and administration here at Rankin Construction.
After I finished college, I started here in 1989, and I worked the first 5 years in the office estimating and became estimating coordinator. And then I think the last 9 years I've been out in the field as a project manager, and I'm a vice president as well, and look after a couple of our paving crews, and we have our own asphalt plant in Vineland, so I look after a lot of the road work that we do. I think it was probably 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, my father bought the farm. At that point, I wasn't really exposed to much racing, except maybe down in Cape Breton on summer holidays. We'd go to Inverness or Sydney and see some of my uncles and my dad's cousins racing back then. Started to learn more about the pedigrees of the horses and the bloodlines, and got interested in that aspect of racing as well. And from there, it's just evolved into owning a few broodmares and owning a few racehorses, I guess. I own a third of some and a half of some, and I think I own a half of a third of some. I think totally I own a part of about 10 horses. So maybe I've got about 3 horses and 1 quarter horse, I guess. So.
Well, at first I think my wife was probably wondering if, I'm going out and buying horses, and, which basically I'm not a farmer, I'm an engineer by profession, president of a construction company, and I think she thought I was perhaps going out of my rocker at first, but the nice thing about it, she, I think, enjoys the horses now as much as I do, and gives her input, and comes over here every once in a while, and so is kind of a guiding light in lots of ways. And at first, when I'd send a check out, she thought I was just buying another piece of construction equipment. And but anyway, it was for a horse. But now, the nice thing about it, my 2 sons, Brian and Glenn, both have great interest. They own a number of horses here, and Glenn rarely misses a race in Ottawa. Goes to the teletheater all the time. And Brian is just as interested and just loves to go to the sales in Harrisburg or Kentucky or wherever it is. And so it's become a family thing. My daughter Wendy is the controller for the company, and she also looks after all the stake payments and keeps us online and with our costs, and looks after all the books for the horse business as well. Actually, it was a friend of mine probably 12, 13 years ago, called me up and asked me if I wanted to go into buy a standardbred horse. And I told him I didn't have any great interest, but I said my brother is always talking about horses. And I said to him, what kind of a horse is it? And he said, it's a filly. And I said, can my brother come in? And he said, yes. And I said, does the horse have 4 legs? And he said, yes. And I said, we're in. And that's how it started. It was through my son Glenn, who was working with the company at that time. He's now a chartered accountant in Ottawa. And I said, Glenn, if we're going to build our own farm and a racetrack, then we have to hire a trainer. And Glenn called a gentleman by the name of Paul McGuire. And Paul gave Glenn a number of names, but he did recommend Pat Hunt. So Glenn called up Pat, and we both sat in on the interview. And we offered Pat a job, and I've just been thrilled that he came and worked for us and has been here ever since.
Well, it's the best job I've ever had. It's I don't know, it's a great opportunity for me. I've never had this kind of breeding. I know when I came to talk to him the first time, you walk through the barn and you could tell there wasn't much here. The stock that was here, he was trying with the breeding and that kind of thing, but the stock that was here at the time wasn't much. But when I sat down and talked to him, he talked about where he'd like to go, like the type of breeding he wanted, where he was breeding. He'd already started to breed better at that time. So when you get somebody talking that way, that sooner or later they're going to have something. So it kind of impressed me, and that's how I ended up taking the job.
It was just a thrill of a lifetime. We purchased Liberty in Harrisburg as a yearling. He didn't make it to the races as a 2-year-old. And after a lot of hard work and due diligence by our trainer, Pat Hunt, he finally made it as a 3-year-old. And then to win the Breeders' Crown at the end of the season was the culmination of just a great year. And it was a thrill of a lifetime, believe me.
Sure helps the cause. I don't know, it just seems to help your whole stable, and gives you that opportunity to get better horses and work with better ones. That's certainly what's happened here, because after he did do good, then we ended up buying more, the better breed, and it's just helped the whole stable here. And it would do that for anybody. Anybody would do the same thing too. That's just putting money back into the business. But Tom's been good about that ever since it came here. He's put a lot of money into the business, and it's worked out with this one, and there's a few more I think it's going to turn out with.
Jill's a graduate of University of Windsor, honors graduate in nursing. She followed in her mother's footsteps. Her mother's a nurse, and she worked at University Hospital for quite a few years. Now she's raising a family with her husband Kevin and 3 lovely boys. We have a total of 9 grandchildren, and the first 6 are boys, so at Christmas or any festive occasion, we normally go up to our beach house up in Lake Erie, and it's quite the, it's really something with the 6 boys running around.